Greetings, Chem students. This is Mr. Braun, and this is the pre-lab video for acid-base titration, computer experiment number 24. This is yet another acid-base titration that you will be doing, except for you're going to use a new piece of equipment on this one. For this particular one, you can see right here that I have an acid because it's already dissociated. Here's a base, it's already dissociated. So this is hydrochloric acid reacting with sodium hydroxide to produce water, and here's the salt, sodium chloride. So we have a titration reaction happening right here. Neutralization, so to speak, a double replacement. Okay. So when the hydrochloric acid solution is titrated with a sodium hydroxide solution, the pH of the acidic solution is initially very low, has a very low pH. Now, it will gradually increase until it gets close to the equivalence point. Okay, when we near the equivalence point, the pH will very rapidly increase. So that's where you can see on the table here that we get close to the equivalence point, bam, there is that rapid increase, the gradual increase, rapid increase, okay? So in this experiment, you will use the computer to monitor the pH as you do the titration. The region of the most rapid pH change will then be used to determine the equivalence point. Okay. Then you will use the volume of the sodium hydroxide titrant and the equivalence point to determine the molarity of the hydrochloric acid. So the objectives of this experiment will be to use a pH sensor to monitor changes in pH, to plot a graph of pH versus volume of sodium hydroxide. That will be done for you on the computer. You will need to print a copy of this graph for each person in your group. Finally, we're going to use the graph to determine the equivalence point, and we're going to use that equivalence point to calculate the concentration of the hydrochloric acid solution. Sounds pretty difficult. It is not. All right. Now, the thing that's a little bit different, and you can see it says method 1 right here. I've taken method 2 out. You won't even see that part of the lab because we're going to use method 1. Method 1 is using a burette. I will have a pre-lab demonstration on how to use the burette. Now, one thing that we're not going to have is we're not going to have this neat little magnetic stir right here. You're going to have to use a stirring rod to stir. Now, one thing about that, anytime we have this pH probe, you know that that glass ball at the end of that pH probe down here is very easy to break. So we're going to have to stir with a stirring rod and not break that bulb at the end of that probe. So you're going to have to be very, very careful with this, okay? If you can look at the materials need, we have a pH center. We're going to need an unknown hydrochloric acid. There's your sodium hydroxide. You'll know that. Phenolphthalein is going to be our indicator. Once again, we will not have a magnetic stir or anything. You're going to have to use your stirring rod. But all of this stuff other than the ring stand and the utility clamp should be in your drawer or somewhere about the lab, okay? I will show you where the burette is. Okay, they're in the back of the room, nice and ordered. So I'll show you where that burette is, and I'll show you how to use a burette when lab day comes. Okay, you'll be following the directions. Okay, if you look right here is a valve on the burette. You'll be using that valve to add the sodium hydroxide into the solution of the hydrochloric acid. Excuse me. Here it says, caution, handle the hydrochloric acid with care. It can cause painful burns. So make sure that you do not get the hydrochloric acid on you. Okay. Now, you're going to place the hydrochloric acid. You're going to have this set up right here. Okay. Here's the tough part that you're going to have to do. We're going to add this stuff into the beaker using the burette. All right? So you're going to use the burette to add these. Okay? So if you follow directions before adding the titrant, now you're ready to begin the titration. So you're going to add the titrants here. You're going to add increments until the pH raises about 0.15 units, and then you follow the directions. Okay? The big thing is, okay, that when you get to a pH value of approximately 3.5, you need to add 1 drop at a time. So you need to be able to open that valve and close that valve to only get 1 drop. This isn't a very easy thing to do. So you need to watch that, be careful. Okay, I'm not going to say practice it because we're not going to be able to. But you need to be able to open that valve and to close it and get 1 drop. So as you're adding a lot of the titrant up here in these steps, you might want to try to see if you can put 1 drop in at a time. Maybe that could be your practice. Okay. So you're going to add 1 drop at a time. You're going to see a graph that should be looking something like this guy. That, you know, when you're adding it to the 1 drop at the time when it's about a pH of 3.5, look what happens about 3.5. Zip! That's where that rapid increase happens. So that's why we want to add it 1 drop at a time, or you're not going to see that rapid increase as good as this is right here. And this is what your graph should look something like. Okay? Now, when you are finished, okay, you can dispose of the beaker contents into the sink. If you have anything left in your burette, you can go ahead and put that into the sink also. You need to clean your burette, and I'm going to show you how to do that a little bit later also. Okay, so I'll show you how to do that, how to clean your burette on lab day. And finally, you need to print copies of the graph for each one in your group. Now, if you look here, here is the data processing. Here is the data table. You're going to be doing some of the same things that we've been doing with the titrations. So the calculations, I don't feel like are that terribly difficult. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Braun. This has been the pre-lab video for experiment 24 on the computer, acid-base titration. Come, students, let's investigate.